Hello there, and welcome to another episode of Electric Sheep. Let's get things going with a longer story over 7 minutes, and it is titled Anglo's Purpose.
Anglo's purpose. My name is Anglo. I came from a different world. A small headline on every channel the day I arrived. Ribbon cuttings and cameras and speeches. For a while, they treated me like a miracle. Dinners in glass towers, handshakes with men who had the power to close borders and open markets. Children waved homemade flags. Old men argued on radio shows about what my coming meant. It didn't take long for the practical question to be asked aloud. If I wanted to stay, how would I provide for myself? The welcome had an end date stamped on it. I had to find a place among the everyday things that keep a planet turning. My body made finding that place difficult. Compared to humans, I was massive and bulbous in the way a boulder is different from a pebble, slow to adjust to small doorways, a little awkward in thin clothing, a gravity everyone felt when I moved. I could lift what two men thought was impossible. I loved the honest pull of work, the smell of wet concrete and hot metal and grease, things that let me measure myself without looking at other people's faces. For a while, I found work in construction. The first day I hauled a column up 3 flights by myself, the site cheered. But the more I did, the more their cheers turned. Men watched me like an animal at a fence, and rumor fed on itself. He does too much. He makes us look small. He'll take our jobs. The foreman, who had applauded my strength, started to reassign me to tasks where I would do less damage to their sense of worth, then to fewer tasks. Then, quietly, I was gone. I tried security. It seemed like a natural fit. People protected by my presence, machines made useless by my hands. I did one good thing, a small, foolish good that had no business growing into legend. A thief hopped into a car with a purse still clutched in leather fingers. The engine attempted to flee. I stepped in front of it. The driver cussed and hit the gas. I put my palms on the hood. The engine strained and the car trembled. Tires skidded. The thief's face went long with surprise when the metal did not give way. The car coughed, the battery sputtered, and the world paused until officers arrived. The story made the rounds. Some called me hero. Others said I'd crushed the law of labor, that I had used unnatural strength to bend a human situation to my will. There were whispers about what I might do in darker hours. The company that had hired me decided it would be easier without me. They said my presence attracted too many complications, so I scrubbed floors. Banks, ironically, were the place I found peace. The quiet hum of machines, the human choreography of morning commutes, the way daylight pooled on marble. As a janitor, I worked alone. I didn't have to explain my hands or my shape. No one watched me the way they watched men who could be judged and found wanting. Then, on an ordinary Tuesday, that quiet broke. A faulty transformer in the alley coughed and sent a line of electrical fire hissing along the lower wiring. Alarms flared like startled birds. The bank's anti-theft containment system, a lattice of reinforced doors and electromagnetic seals, engaged on cue, sealing everyone inside until the system's engineers could verify no robbery was in progress. That would have been fine if the wires hadn't ignited the corridors, and if the doors had been built for smoke and heat rather than electrical insult. People pressed at the sealed doors. Panic is a simple thing. 1,000 small pulses of the same fear multiplied into force. I watched as groups tried the handles, as a child wailed, as an old man whispered for someone to do something. Their faces turned toward me the way a sea turns to its lighthouse, not as a miracle, but as a last arithmetic. If the rumors were true, then maybe this one body could change the numbers. They parted. A space opened that smelled of warm metal and fear, and I stepped forward. The doors were not doors to me. They were mechanical promises of safety, now betrayed by circumstance. I did not think of heat or law or rumor. I thought of the weight of human breath held behind glass and metal. I assaulted the doors the way I had once hauled columns. Repetition, rhythm, the slow learning of a thing's weakness. I tackled the steel again and again. The first impact was like slamming against someone who has been standing too long. The door answered with a tired, metallic thud. The second time, the joints complained. The third, the frame shifted a millimeter, and the sound climbed into a scale of warnings. Pull! "Push!" someone shouted. We had no firefighters there yet, only voices and the inching of danger. I put my whole shoulder against the seam and heaved. It resisted. I braced my feet. I heaved again and again until the sound of metal gave way to a necklace of noises. Pop, click, crack. Each was a small fracture in the story that said these people could be kept out or kept in by machine. Sweat ran into the collar of my shirt. My heart, if it was counted as heart, felt like a drum. For every sound of breaking, there was a counter voice in the crowd, a prayer, a curse, a child counting, an old woman singing a name. The door finally surrendered with a boom that smelled of dust and ozone. It tore open not like an entrance, but like something relieved. The people surged through. First the slow, then the hurried, then the ones who had been still with fear, then the ones who cried. A woman dropped to her knees and pressed her forehead to the marble as if she could say thank you directly to the floor. A man who had earlier hissed at me on the sidewalk, the same man who had said I made honest workers feel ashamed, stood with his hand on my shoulder. He did not speak. He only held on. They asked me once, in that noisy, human way, what I wanted. Food? A place to sleep? Money? Glory? I considered all of those and found them small as the coins in their pockets. I wanted only what I had felt when the doors gave way, the simple accord of human lives being allowed to go on. You could have stayed inside, the bank manager said later, breathless and damp with extinguisher. He tried to measure my deed with policy and with insurance forms. I looked at him the way a person looks at a clock after forgetting they had promised to be somewhere. The truth I carried was not a ledger. I am Anglo. I had arrived here under lights and cameras. I had been judged and loved and feared. I had been too much for some and not enough for others. But when the crowd of pinned, frightened people opened their faces to me, and trust led them like a hand, I realized something deeper than acceptance or employment. When everything else failed, my strength could be used to make room for someone else's breath. That night, they wrote about me in the papers and on the feeds. Some called it a miracle again. Some called it an accident. Some called it a danger narrowly averted. None of those names mattered to me. I scrubbed the same marble the next morning. The ink in the corners of the articles had dried. The world made a new day. I am Anglo, and that was my purpose.
Alrighty. Like I said, it's a longer story than I've done in a long time, but all in all, it's an immigrant story, but it could be the story of any outsider, you know? There's times when we all feel different and feel like our strengths can be our weaknesses, and vice versa. The thing that we try to hide might be the thing that is what the world needs in the end. It's just a matter of circumstances, finding your purpose, and all that wonderful stuff. So I'll just leave it at that since this episode's already a couple minutes long. But my name is Joseph Arthur Roszell, and I want to thank you for watching, and I want to wish you all the luck in the world. And I want you to remember that I love you. Peace out.